here. All right, so I want to introduce Miss Delia Perez Meyer. And like I said, I met her 15 years ago, and at least, and maybe a little bit longer, but she is a true activist. Her most really, I think, really committed activists have something that happened that spur on that direction into an activist position. I really believe that a trauma or something happens that's a catalyst. There's activists, of course, everywhere, but to be an activist for as long as Delia's been an activist is a lifelong commitment, because she's basically spent her entire life as an activist to end capital punishment. And so she's a teacher. She's retired from, did I read at St. Elizabeth College in Austin?
Well, I worked at St. Edward's University.
Edwards University. Yeah, sorry about that.
That's
And
okay.
so she's taught in her entire adult life. She's retired from teaching at the university there. And now she's, I'm assuming, a full-time activist. Is that correct?
I'm a full-time retiree.
Okay, a full-time retiree. So without further ado, Delia, thank you for coming and welcome. And let me know when you want me to share a screen or do anything like that, and I will.
All right, thanks so much. Well, first of all, thanks so much for having me. I am absolutely honored to be here and grateful, and so is my brother. And so I'll just start going through the little notes that I jotted down today. And as I told you earlier, it really brings back the trauma that you talk about. So in September of 1998, 3 girls were murdered in Austin, Texas, 2 women and a little girl, and their names were Michelle and Cinda and Stacy. And they were my little brother's friends, and he happened to be there that weekend that the girls were murdered. And he left the home on that day. I think it was September the 10th of 1998. And when he got home, got back to their house in the afternoon, all 3 girls had been murdered. And one of them was at the front of the door where he walked in, and she was barely alive. And he picked her up and she scratched him, and he put her down and he walked away from that crime scene. And that's basically what put him on death row, was the fact that she scratched him and his DNA was under her nails. So that is pretty much, the crux of what happened. He didn't see who the murderer was. He did not know anything about it. And he pretty much went to death row within a year. He's been on Texas's death row for going on 25 years now. And like you said, it really catapulted me into being an activist. I really, at that time, for the first couple of years, you're just in shock and trauma. And Lewis talked about this, that you get this pain in the pit of your stomach that is just so much trauma and sorrow and sadness, because he lost 3 of his best friends. I lost my brother. We knew he was innocent, and that just exacerbated the pain, And so the first couple of years, really, to be honest with you, I just cried and cried and cried and just laid around and cried and cried. And finally, one day, by the grace of God, I got up and I just decided that I was going to start fighting for him. And I had no idea where to go. And so I just kind of started Googling death row, and I met up with this lady named Lily Hughes. And Lily, at that time, was at the University of Texas with a group of students, and they had started something called the Campaign to End the Death Penalty. And so that's kind of where my work started, my activism work started. During that time, I was really into the arts and culture and music, and I was on a board of director for a cultural center, and that was my whole life, was art, music, dance, drama, theater, you name it, I wanted to be there. My dad was a musician, and we grew up in that arena. And I told one of my friends one day that I was going to have to leave the art world because I had to go fight for my brother. And we had this long conversation, and she said, Delia, it might help you kind of marry the two things, your art and your activism. And so, and that's pretty much what I did. And so, Jane, when you called me about this, I'm like, wow, I never even put those two things together. But that's pretty much what exactly what happened was the trauma catapulted me into doing this abolition work. And then, of course, I dragged the art stuff into it, or the art came to me, really. So the way that the art came to me is, as my brother's case rolled on the first few years, my brother had never been in prison. And so they put him in a unit with juveniles. So there were like 48 kids on death row. They had committed a murder when they were 16 or 17, but they tried them as adults. So they were all on death row. They'd never been in prison before. They put my brother with all those little kids. And so that's how I got into my first pen pal writings. So I ended up with 70 pen pals over the years. Most of them have been executed. But with those young kids that Lewis made friends with, they all started sharing their artwork. At that time, they were only allowed to have a pencil to do the artwork. So they all started doing art and pictures, and they would send, pictures home to their loved ones. And before I knew it, my brother had become an artist. The first book that I sent Lewis about art was How to Draw Hands. And I have his first major drawing. I don't know if you can see this or not, Jane, can you? Can you see that? I lost you.
Can you turn on your video camera so we can see you?
Let me see.
It's at the bottom there.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry.
That's okay. I didn't want to be rude. So now we can see it.
Okay. So there's his first drawing, and it really became like this worldwide phenomenon that everybody wanted this particular picture, and it did. It went all around the world, and it's called Suéltame, which is let me go in Spanish, and so that's kind of what started this artwork, and art shows for me. My brother was not an artist when he went to death row. And so I sent him little books and things, and he just started drawing. But so I wrote down the names of some of the organizations that I just started looking to get help from. And I list them on the PowerPoint too, but one of the first ones was the Campaign to End the Death Penalty. And then I met some friends, and they started something called the Texas Moratorium Network, which was Scott Cobb. Mm-hmm. And we still do an annual march each year in October. And then I met Bill Pelkey, who was with the Journey of Hope. Mm-hmm. And his grandmother had been murdered. She was a Sunday school teacher, and some girls knocked on her door and said they wanted to have a Sunday school class. And they ended up stabbing her over 30 times and left her dead on the floor. And Bill found her the next day. And so he fought so hard for the young lady that killed his grandmother. And I want to say they got over 1 million petition signatures in Europe through the Sant'Egidio community, which is a Catholic organization. And they were able to keep her from getting the death penalty. He later helped her go through college, finish school and go through college while she was in prison. And then she was released probably about, I want to say at least 10, maybe 5 or 10 years ago. I can't remember exactly, but she ended up committing suicide when she got home. So, but I'll never forget, Bill Pelkey also recently passed away. He had a heart attack while he was shoveling snow in Alaska, where he lived with his girlfriend. And he's very sorely missed because he had such a big heart. Did you know him, Jane? Had you met Bill Pelkey?
There we go. Yeah, I knew him and photographed him. So I have photographs from, I think, 2006, maybe
Yeah.
2007, somewhere around there.
Yeah.
Within a year or two of the one I have of you with that drawing, because I have that one of you holding that exact drawing. So we should
Yeah.
do another one with that draw, actually, but I don't want to get off
Yeah.
on that. But anyway, yeah. So
Yeah.
he was
Well, he
just
was
a big-hearted
wonderful.
guy. Yes, he was.
Yeah, and he was very instrumental, I think, in my abolition work. In that, the first thing that Bill Pelkey said to me was, "I love you." I was holding a sign. I was scared to death. I was shaken, and the sign said, "My brother is innocent on death row." And he just walked up and he said, "I love you," and I'm like, that was all it took, you know. And I felt like I was okay with being an abolitionist, with holding a sign and protesting in front of the governor's mansion and going, you know, to Washington D.C. and so that's really where my activism started. He was also extremely spiritual in nature, and that also that appealed to me a lot. He had a really spiritual, holistic view at life, and he just really made me feel like I belonged in this arena of abolition and trying to abolish the death penalty around the world, not just in Texas, but you know, I went with him all over the world. I mean, we went to Spain, to Italy, to France, Germany, Puerto Rico. I didn't get to go to, they went to Africa. I didn't get to go to Africa, but he definitely was a huge impact in my life, and I miss him so much. One of the other groups is called the Witness to Innocence, and I'm sure you're familiar with it, Jane Tufan. I don't know if have you heard of the Witness to Innocence?
No, I never heard of them.
Yeah, they're an organization based out of Philadelphia, and Sister Helen Prejean that wrote Dead Man Walking. Have you heard of that movie or book? It's really good. It's called Dead Man
on
Walking.
The Slack group, Tufan, because I bet he hasn't, because how long have you been over here, Tufan?
Since the beginning.
How long? Oh, were you born here? I'm so sorry.
Oh, no. I've been here since 2020.
Okay, yeah.
2000.
So
I've been here for 22 years. Sorry, I was.
Okay.
Yeah.
I got it from.
Yeah. So I was trying to see if he knew that movie. Do you know that movie, Dead Man Walking?
No.
Okay, I'll put it on our Slack group so
Okay.
a link to it so they can.
Yeah, that would be great. So, so Sister Helen Prejean is a nun, and she's one tough cookie, and she fought so hard for men on death row. And she started this organization called the Witness to Innocence. And the Witness to Innocence now has 186 men and 2 women that have been exonerated from death rows across this country because they were innocent. And she's amazing. And she's really elderly now, but she still gets around to, you know, to conferences and things. And I got to meet her in Austin a couple of times, and she was just wonderful. She recently helped us with the Rodney Reed case. If you all, I'm sure, Jane, you know, but Tufan, there's a case in Texas right now that's become super popular because Dr. Phil did a show about the Rodney Reed case. And Sister Helen Prejean also came, you know, to speak to the family. And you know, we had events at churches and universities and speaking about our cases. So that's the Witness to Innocence. And then, of course, we have the Innocence Projects. I looked this up. I'm trying to remember. The Innocence Projects are a little bit different. They work more closely with the universities, the judges, the lawyers. They get really, really involved in these cases of innocence. And let's see. I'm trying to remember. I can't remember where I put the number, but I think there's something like 700. I don't want to miscount there, but anyway, there's so many people that have been exonerated, not just from death row, but from prisons around the world. And 2 of the cases that we have worked closely with is the case of Melissa Lucio. Melissa Lucio is out of the Texas Valley, and her little girl fell down the stairs, and they blamed her, and they gave her, they put her on death row, on women's death row for that. And then most recently, there was a lady out of France that did a film, The State versus Lucio, and discovered that she was innocent, and probably one of the other children pushed the little girl down the stairs, is what they're saying now. But they fought so hard for her, and they actually got 70 senators, I think, to sign off on a letter to the Board of Pardons and Parole to stop her execution, which they did. And so we're waiting now to see if they're going to give her a new trial, or they will most likely, I hope they will release her. That's really what we want. She needs to be back with her family. She had something like 14 children. And so that case is really important that we've been working on. And then there was another case, a lady named Rosa Jimenez. And Jane, I'm sure you're familiar with Rosie's case. Rosa was an undocumented worker. She was babysitting this little boy, and he choked on some paper towels or whatever. And she ran next door and dialed 911. And when the police came, they blew air down the baby's throat. And then the firemen came and they did the same thing. And the baby died. And they blamed it on Rosa. So she went not to death row, but she got 99 years in prison. So we fought hard for her. And she got released about a year ago. Not because of the innocence issue, but on a humanitarian basis, in that her kidneys have failed. And so she's not doing well, and she has to go through kidney dialysis and stuff. But it's a big win for us when we get somebody off of death row or out of prison like that. And so let's see, 570 executions. Okay, so then I wanted to just say a little tiny bit about the federal executions. At the end of Trump's tenure, he raced to execute, like, I can't remember. Let me see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. I think there was 12 executions right at the very end of his tenure. And then, of course, there were some other executions during 2021, and we've had a couple this year as well. But the one that really, really affected me the most, I think, I went to Indiana. So every time we have an execution, Tufan, we stand in front of the prison, we protest, we vigil, we say prayers, we stand with the families, the friends of either the victims or the ones being executed. So every single execution, we are somewhere, Capitol, the execution place in Huntsville. And this particular execution was of a gentleman named Quentin Jones. Quentin had murdered his great aunt for money, I think. And on the day that he was going to be executed, his girlfriend just simply couldn't do it. She just couldn't do it. She couldn't go in there and witness it. And she just couldn't deal with it. And so when I got there, I invited her to come over so she could, calm down and sit down, but she just couldn't do it. So when they called her to see who was going to witness the execution or who was going to pick the body up, she said she couldn't do it. So I had to do it. I was the only one there. And I never in my wildest dreams thought that I was going to either witness or see a dead body right after execution, a murdered body. And so that's what happened. They executed him and they took him directly to the funeral home. And so we had to go there and you get an opportunity to view the body, right? And so she did not want to go by herself. And so I walked in and I didn't know Quentin. He was not one of my pen pals. I didn't know him, And But what I witnessed was that his body was still shaking and quivering and moving. And I was just completely, totally just stunned and in shock. I just couldn't believe it. And there was about 10 men standing there, all officials. And generally, right after an execution, they walk out, they shake hands, they pat each other on the back. It's a win for them to execute someone. And it's just a horrific thing to witness each time, but to actually see the body doing what it was doing after being injected with these, series of chemicals that stop your heart, stop your body, stop your life, and kill you. And to witness that is just something that, you can't ever unsee. And I will never forget that. But I hope that he's resting in peace. And it was just a horrific thing. Then I think I've already talked about Melissa and Rodney Reed. Okay, so then I was kind of looking, there's an organization called the Death Penalty Information Center. And Robert Dunham is the executive director now, and they are amazing. They track all executions and they post them, and they have the names and the dates and the states, everything about it. And it's really amazing. And they publish these amazing, incredible informational articles that they produce. And it's a wonderful website. If you want to know anything about anybody on death row, that is the place to go. The last article that they printed, that they put out, they said that 70% of the exonerations on death row are because of these patterns of racial discrimination, of police misconduct, prosecutorial misconduct, and racial bias, perjury, and false testimony. And Tufan, where are you from? Do you guys have the death penalty in your country?
I was born in Turkey. I was born in Istanbul. For so many decades, no one has been executed. We did have the death penalty, but I'm not very sure if it still is accurate or not.
Yeah.
It's been a long time since.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I'll look that up. But what a wonderful place to be from, Istanbul, Turkey.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen movies, that's how we recognize things. Sorry, I thought I turned my phone off. So, it was real. I mean, we already knew this, right, Jane? We've already known that this is exactly why innocent people go to death row, like my brother, right? They thought it was him. They put him on the stand. They showed that his fingerprints were on a Coca-Cola can, on a glass of beer, and in the bathroom where he went to the bathroom, they found his fingerprints. They were not on any of the murder weapons. They were not, it was just mind-boggling. But it was all because he walked away from the crime scene. So, I always have to say that, my brother made the first mistake, but if he would have called 911, the murderer was still in the house and he probably would have been the next victim, So, but while I'm talking about that, Jane, I haven't had a chance to tell you this, but we have a new district attorney in Austin, Texas, and his name is Jose Garza. And he recently turned over several boxes of evidence that they've been hiding for 25 years.
Oh my
So
gosh.
those boxes of evidence have now gone to the attorneys, to the judge first, and then now they're going through all of those things. And so we really have finally a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel, in hopes that maybe something in that box, in those boxes, will point to the actual murderer of those three girls, because really we have no idea who did that, But I know that his attorney's name is Marcy Greer, and she's just doing a wonderful job. She is really one tough woman, and actually she used to live across the street from us, and so she knew our family, and so that was a big plus for us, is that she believed in Lewis's innocence. That was the most important thing, that we find someone who would believe that Lewis was incapable of murdering his three best friends, basically.
Right.
So we're really excited about that. Okay, so then just, every year we have something called the Fast and Vigil in Washington, D.C. And it's based on two super important dates. One of them is the Furman decision in 1972 that they actually abolished the death penalty in the United States. And this year is the 50th anniversary of that. So when we go to DC at the end of the month, then it's going to be, it's going to be important for us to be there on the 50th anniversary of abolition, even though we still have the death penalty very much intact. And then that's on June the 29th. And then we go all the way through July the 2nd without eating, fasting, which, I always tell the story that I had never heard my stomach growl before. And my friend Suja Graham, who's an exoneree, he just got such a big kick out of that because being on death row for decades, I'm sure his poor little tummy growled every day. And then the other important date is July the 2nd, which was the Gregg decision, Gregg versus Georgia, where they reinstated the death penalty in 1976. And so since then, 570 people have been executed, and most of those in Texas. It's really, really unbelievable that we continue to do that. So and I love the theme of the activism and the art, because I hadn't really thought about it that way until today. And I sat down and I started going through, I just moved, so everything is in a box. So I started going through my computer and I realized, oh my God, this can happen for you in any way you choose it, you just have to, what is your passion? What is your interest? Where do your interests lie? And if like for me, it was art and music and dance. And that's where I thought that my life was going to be, but it turned out to be death row, turned out to be abolition of the death penalty around the world. But, for you guys that are going through college and you're trying to find something worthwhile to make a mark in this world, it could be anything. It could be the environment, the global warming, the cleaning up of the oceans, this gun control issue with what happened in Uvalde. I think that's going to be really big in the next couple of years, that people are going to stand up. They've already started standing up after so many shootings have occurred in our country. I think the one in Florida.
That's a really good example of why, and I'm not being hounding on the police, but why just because somebody says something is so doesn't mean it's so. I mean, that's the thing, that just because somebody, and another interesting thing too, I don't want to, like I said, I won't fear us, but it's also just in evidence, the way evidence is presented. For example, if a crime scene photographer is trained by the police, no, I think that's a really important point. Then the way that they look at evidence through their camera could be really different than the way somebody else who is also a photographer, and that say is trained by somebody besides the police. That can also play a part, I don't know. So there's a lot of things, but I'm not saying don't trust the police, but just because the police, we're seeing, and I'm so glad that we're seeing the police can be just as full of shit as anybody else, even more so, because they stick to each other. They sure do. Yeah. So even if someone's wrong, and you know what, they do that in every state or county enforcement, whether it's a public defender or the DA, if someone screwed up, they, instead of just saying, okay, we need to fix this problem, a lot of times they just get together and don't do that, like they act like it didn't happen or justify it. So I didn't want to get off, but I really want to validate that what you're saying, because it's pretty important. Yeah. Like I said, we're seeing it play out in that Uvalde shooting. It just makes me sick.
Yeah. And you know what? That is a perfect example, because they said that the resource officer was there, but evidently he wasn't. They said the teacher left the door open. Well, I can attest to that, because it used to make me so angry when teachers would leave a rock and leave that door open, and I never thought of a shooter, but just anybody to come and kidnap a child or whatever, But in this particular case, you can see that the cops, the sheriffs, the border patrol agents, the DPS, the troopers, I mean, everybody is they're just passing the buck, rather than take responsibility and say, okay, we messed up, and we're going to change this. This has never happened again on our watch, But you're right. I mean, it's called collusion, and it happens all the time. And I'm sure that it happened in your country, Tufan, as well. But we're afraid to speak up, and we're afraid to fight the system because they will retaliate. And we know that. I mean, and it's really a double-edged sword. You want to stand up and fight to do the right thing, yet you know that you are, up against a Goliath, and it's scary. They always tell us, don't talk about it. Don't talk about it. I'm sure I've said way too much already today, but they tell you, do not talk about it. And that's how these things continue to occur, because we don't stand up and say something, So as far as the activism work, so I was thinking, wow. First of all, I thought about this art, on death row. So I collected art, and I just, lugged it all around the world, basically, or shipped it, and had these little art shows, and it's been a lot of fun. Just having all the artists and families, and then we did, for Lewis's case, we did a little movie called The Road to Livingston. And that was with a filmmaker who actually heard me speak at a university. And he wasn't so much intrigued by the death penalty case of my brother, but by the fact that I would go back and forth every week, 500 miles to see him, and then take people with me. And we would stop at all these restaurants and made friends along the way. And people were getting married on death row. And so he followed me, I mean, literally in the backseat of my car for years, and filmed the Road to Livingston. And we actually saw Kenneth Foster get married, and they filmed the wedding. We were at a radio station. Of course, he was in prison, and they did their vows over the radio, and she was all dressed up. It's just really fun. And that one was called the Road to Livingston. The next film that we worked on is something called I Am Troy Davis. And Tufan, I don't know if you may or not recall the name Troy Davis, but if you just Google it, you will see that millions of people around the world tried to save his life, and they sadly executed him in Georgia. And there's a filmmaker named Philip Montgomery that came from California, and he went to New York City, and a lady named Jen Marlowe, who's also an activist and just a wonderful person all around. And they had a script for the movie of I Am Troy Davis. And so they gathered all of us. So there were exonerees, death row family members, other activists and actors, and they had a whole film crew out there. And we went in and we read the play. Everybody had a part in this play. And he was going to make a movie out of this play. But as it turned out, the reading was so powerful. So now they're making a movie of us sitting around reading this play. And I got to be the part of this Texas sheriff, which really, I'm not an actress, and I've never really, not much, a little tiny bit, just local, musical or something. But boy, I got up and I acted like a Texas sheriff with the Texas drawl. And it was just, you just go right into it. It's really amazing. So that was a lot of fun. And that was in New York City a couple of years ago, and they're still working on the film. And that was really a great experience. And then there was a film that we worked on called The Penalty. And there have been actually several films about the exonerees themselves, which have been really amazing to watch. Some of the guys, and you may know some of these guys, Jane, but some of the exonerees that I became very, very close to because they came after me and my brother, you know, was Juan Melendez, Suja Graham, Kirk Bloodsworth, Gary Drinkard, Ron Kiney, and then a gentleman named Damon Thibodeau. He was very young. He just got off of death row, like, I don't know, 5 years ago. He took the COVID shot and died. And so we just laid him to rest not too terribly long ago. But they did a film about him. His name is Damon Thibodeau. And it was very, very sad to lay him to rest after he just got off of death row a few years ago. And then the last film that we worked on is called The Death Row Angels. And so we just got, there was a filmmaker from the Netherlands, and she called the Witness to Innocence. They sent her to me, and she wanted to do a film about the women who fall in love with death row inmates, because it's a thing. It's a phenomenon. Women with big hearts and lots of empathy, it's just amazing how it's a magnet for them to go to death row and try to, you know, they fall in love with these people, you know, who most generally have murdered someone. Remember the Menendez brothers, Jane Lindsay? Yeah. And I think.
And what about, well, I've met a lot of the people I've photographed were women that were either European women, that I think it's a whole thing, you know, like you're talking about. And then other women where they're like, well, like Connie, who started out as a missionary and then they fall in love. But the hard part about that, I think, or what I learned through the project, was that there's these stages that people go through, you know, and you've probably seen it in there, or they get married and they go through this stage where they suddenly think that their person's going to get off somehow. Even if they're, that, you know, whether they are guilty or not, something changes in that dynamic where they think that they're going to get off. That's what I learned. And then they don't. And it's so traumatic. You know, that project was so long that I saw those things happening.
Yeah.
And that is a phenomenon within itself, because it's most likely not going to come to a happy end, like Troy Davis. I mean, everybody knows he was innocent, but he still got executed.
Yes.
You know, so there's this thing that goes on, you know, and then they're traumatized, like, you know, from now on. Or if they do get exonerated, like Curtis McCarty, I mean, he's already been back in prison a couple of times, at least once. And, you know, because then they're so mentally ill, like Curtis' situation. He was in McAllister, which was even worse than I think here. He just, you know, then he gets into the real world. By then, a mental illness is in full force. You got to deal with the stimulation, you know, being in a place, in a little space for 22 years, you know, without the right kind of support coming out. And he did, you know, going and speaking and all that. But now, I just saw him last September, and he's not doing as well as I hoped. But it also makes sense too, you know, like it's not that surprising, you know, that, because, you know, so it depends on, I guess it's going to depend on if Lewis gets out, he's got a really supportive family.
Yeah.
So I think that, I mean, you know, to the extent, and Curtis did too, and I think it saved him. But his mom and his dad both passed. And so, and his sister, because that was their main support system. Yeah. His sister they don't get along. So he was telling me that. So I think that that's been a huge impact, is that the two biggest supportive people he had, you know, passed away. So in a way, like you and Carrie both, you know, being a sibling is much more likely that you're going to be able to be there for your person even afterwards, you know, if they get out. So, but I was curious if you noticed that with those marriages, that there's that thing that they go through, and then, or am I just thinking that from the people that I actually photographed?
Yeah, well, I know that with Connie. So Connie's husband was Greg on death row, Gregory Wright. And when they executed him, she took him and she put him in her car and she took him home and she bathed him and she buried him in the backyard.
Yeah.
So that was huge to me. I was like, wow. So then I have to start thinking about what if that happens to my brother? So I need to start, planning for a funeral,
Mhm.
And my dad was like, we're not planning for a funeral. We're planning for him to come home. So there's that thing where you don't want to believe it, but the reality is that 99.9% of the time, our loved ones get executed, whether, like you said, whether they're innocent or not. It's death row. So I have noticed, you're right about the European women. What I have noticed is that they don't stick around for the long run. They may do it for 5 or 10 years, and then it's too hard on them. It's too hard to be away from their loved one. The pain of being with someone who may be executed. And then I think they just sort of drift away, and they end up meeting somebody else, they get married, they have children. They still sometimes keep in contact, but sometimes it just doesn't work out, And I'm thinking about my friend Tony Ford. He had this wonderful girlfriend named Rachel, and then they broke up. And now she has ended up with another prisoner, not on death row. He was on death row, but he was released as a juvenile. And so, each scenario is a little bit different. And I could never understand it. And we talked about it in the film. And she says, Delia, you just can't help who you fall in love with, right? And I'm like, oh, yes, you can.
Yeah. And is that what Rachel said? Because I remember I photographed her too. And that she was someone too that I thought, oh my, she spent all her, like she would live in England and save her money just so she can
Fly.
Fly here. And then like she has a kid, that is like, I can't imagine how she could make the kid a priority financially. And as a single mother, I'm not saying that she didn't at all. I'm just saying it, to me, was
most of them do.
Yeah, she'd figure it out.
Yeah.
And then she was a very nice person too. And so
I saw her not too long ago. She's doing great, and she's very happy with her new boyfriend. And, Tony is happy too. I think that marriage was, it just didn't work out for them. But I'm glad you mentioned Curtis McCarty, because I really, we really love Curtis, and we really hope the best for him. And like you said, once they get off of death row, it's almost impossible to make it if you don't have the support,
Boy, it is. But we can stay in touch and, be supportive as a community. And, actually the reason we got back in touch was his granddaughter, Alex. I was fascinated with her when I made the picture, because she was sick. His son was 6 years old when he went to death row, and his granddaughter was 6 years old when he got off. And so Alex then contacted me in September, and she was then 22. And I was like, holy shit. I'm like, oh my God, because what had happened is Joe died, and the sister had the photograph I gave him. And they wanted the photograph, and they were fighting over it. And I was like, there's no reason to fight. I'm going to print you another one. Yeah, it's not necessary. And so she said, in fact, I think we should make enough. Come to think of it, and that's what made me become interested again in re-photographing everybody to see what happened. I mean, is it a happy ending? Is it still going on? Is it a sad ending?
Still going on.
Yeah, and seeing so. But it was really amazing to see her then, and then not see her, and then see her now. And then, like, I photographed her with these leopard skin pants on. When she was little, I still remember these like little leggings. And then she was going on in the car about something about that she was too girly or whatever, that picture. But I was in the back seat, and there was her purse, and it was a leopard skin purse. And I was like, oh, I mean, that's debatable, because I'm looking at a leopard skin.
How cute is that?
It was really good, sweet thing. So, and then, Curtis, I'll stay in touch with him to be supportive. I give him a lot of encouragement. He just has to get a hold. He needs access. just because you get Social Security, that's not enough to do shit.
Right.
And so and he's going to need that because he can't, he needs more, I think he needs support from the state for convicting him for life
Yeah.
and Social Security so he can afford to have the things he needs.
Right.
But it's not going to happen because the state doesn't, it goes back to that, all that other stuff we were talking about. I guess.
It's hard. It's hard to make it these days, even if you have a regular job and a great education, Excuse
Do you
me.
want me to show the PowerPoint? Because we only have 10 minutes.
I'm really done. I'm really done.
Okay.
I just, like I said, I wanted to just, just say that whatever your passion is, Tufan, what are you really passionate about that you think that you might be interested in doing some kind of activism work about?
Activism actually is very, very new to me. I started learning about it in Miss Lindsay's class. I'm still learning and I still have a lot of, way to go.
Yes.
But a couple of weeks ago, after I, started discovering activism and arts photography with it, the very first thing I've done was going and volunteering for an organization who gives food to the senior people.
Wonderful.
I worked there a few hours and my mentality has started changing.
Yeah.
I see things a little more different now, and
Yes.
I am more into the topic, still learning, searching, discovering from the class, off the class.
Yeah.
Where it'll take me, I don't know, but I definitely would like to volunteer more and learn about it more and discover.
Well, that's great. And as a college professor, I would give you an A just for that, because a lot of people, as an elderly person now, elderly people really do need help. And to be a photographer and take pictures of the elderly, it would be amazing. You see pictures of people that are 100, they lived to be 90 and, but I know watching my father, as he passed away, he was 91. He was such a beautiful person all the way to his death because he was not out there fighting for my brother, but he was standing right behind me every minute of my life fighting for my brother. So activism comes in so many different forms, and so that's great. I hope that you continue to do that.
Right. Thank you.
And it's nice to meet you. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much. Pleasure is mine.
Every time I
sharing your story.
Thank you. Every time I have an event like this and there's only one or two people, it's like, if it helps even just one person understand something about like this for activism or the death penalty, I've done my job,
Yeah.
So
well, you've done it today, that's for sure.
Oh, thanks so much.
Let me get this. I'm going to try to get this going here.
Yeah, just press play or whatever you got there.
I want to view it full screen.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, that's fine.
Oh, you know what? I don't know.
You know what? Just enter, and we'll just slip right through it.
Okay, I'm just
because I've basically said
Can you see it?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, you know what? Now I can make it do what I want. I bet. Let's see.
It looks really beautiful.
Fit to window. It does look good, lovely. I'm going to try to get it to fit to the window.
I love the
I'm going to see if I can have one screen at a time.
No, it's okay.
Okay, we go.
Just hit enter.
Okay.
Yeah. If you hit enter, it goes to the next one.
Okay, just gave us a new slide.
That's all right. Just go to the next one. Yeah. So that was when we got to go to Germany. And that's the picture that I showed you. And the artist took it and created this amazing thing. And it made the newspapers over in Germany, which is really cool.
That's the picture you're holding when I made your.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
This one. Yeah. So that would be really, I'll show you before I come.
Okay.
I'll send it to you. So I think I don't know if I thought I gave you a copy, but I might not have. If I didn't, I'll bring one.
Okay, great. And then that next picture, one right before that one. Yeah. That's just us girls in Washington, D.C. And we're going back up there, June the 29th through July the 2nd. And then the one on the right is us when we went to Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico just celebrated their 90th anniversary of abolition. And that was fun. This is when activism gets fun, when you get to go with other, exonerees and their families. These are all daughters. These are all, let's see. Yeah, that's Jeremy Sheets' wife. Did you get to meet Jeremy Sheets by any chance? He was out of Nebraska, I think. Okay, and then the next one is my little brother, and then my daddy shortly before he passed away with the exonerees that came over to visit him. So Albert Burrell is on the floor there, Gary Drinkard, Ron Kiney, and they're all with the Witness to Innocence.
Luis looks good. I want to call him Luis, but it's Louis, isn't it?
Yeah, it is Louis.
Yeah.
And actually, Louis has aged. Of course, he had 2 heart attacks. He's been really, really sick, and he's on oxygen. He's in the infirmary, and I don't think he'll ever really get out of there. But he's still in great spirits, Jane. So thank you for that.
And because he's got that big smile on his face.
Yeah, he is a doll. He hasn't changed a bit. And this is just all of the different things that I talked about today. The World Coalition Against the Death Penalty, I got to go to Madrid, Spain. And then the one this year is going to be in Berlin, Germany. So talk about saving your pennies.
Yeah. Oh, awesome, though. Fun time, though.
And then this is just a little bit about our march. Every year in October, we have a march. And this is Terry Bean's brother, Jeffrey Wood. And as you know, he was involved in a robbery. And the guy went in and shot him and killed him. And Jeffrey went in and took the videotape, but he got death row and the other guy did not. So that was an interesting case of the law of parties. So it's very unfortunate, but I think we might get Jeffrey out of there.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. The senators have been working really hard on his case.
Oh, that's great. Hope so.
Okay. And then that's us in New York City making the film. And, Suja, have you ever met Suja Graham?
Is she from France?
She is, no, I don't think she's from France, but she's the one that went to to the Innocence Project with Barry Schecht and helped me with my brother's case. That's Suja's wife. Suja was on death row in California. The lady in the middle was an exoneree, Sabrina Smith. And the African-American lady, that's the mother. I can't remember the guy's name, but he was selling cigarettes or something, and they put him on the concrete and they put the knee on his neck and he died.
George Floyd?
I can't breathe. I can't breathe. It was one of those. Floyd. There was a couple of them. Anyway, her son was one of those guys. And that's okay. That's okay. And then these girls are, the Europeans, like you said, a lot of European women come here and they fall in love with these guys and they help them. And it's really amazing at the work that they do. They go to the French Parliament, they go to their government, they go to, international tribunes. It is really amazing. And I love them and we become friends. As a matter of fact, we have a Zoom every Thursday with the international girls just to check in on each other and see how they are.
I would love to photograph them. I'm going to apply for a grant and see if I can get it to pay for travel this time around.
Oh, that would be
older,
wonderful.
It's more expensive for me. I don't know if it's because inflation or because,
both. The gas.
Because I'm old, and I don't work as much as I used to or something. I don't know. I don't make as much money as I used to, that's for sure. Okay.
Right.
Let's keep going up. Isn't that one of Lewis's?
That's one of Lewis's pictures. And I have always shared his artwork for educational purposes. I never, ever tried to sell anything. Well, he decided he was going to donate this to the University of Texas, to their Innocence Project, and they were going to auction it off. And I was so upset. I said, no, Louis, you know, we're not going to sell it. And he said, I've already told him that I would donate the piece. I said, all right. So I went to the art show. I started bidding, and somebody kept bidding and bidding and bidding. It got up to thousands of dollars, and I'm like, okay, I can't do this. And so I didn't get it. And so later on, I posted on Facebook, I said, this is my brother's work, and whoever has this piece, I just ask you to please take care of it, to please cherish it as much as we would. And sure enough, I got an email back from Allison that she says, Delia, I have it. And she's a huge death penalty activist, and one of the first people I met with Bill Pelkey. So she gave it to me. And so I make copies and I share it, and I'll have to send you one.
I would love to have that. That'd be great.
Okay, and then, yep, and that's just,
there's Nadine.
Yeah, there's Nadine, and Sophie was Charles Flores' girlfriend for a while. And then the lady in the back next to me, her name is Linda Mobley Schneider. And she is one of our death row angels, literally goes into death row every single week and visits 5 to 10 people, buys their lunch every day. It is just amazing. She's truly an angel. I just love her to death.
This one
And
is
then-
blank.
I think that's it.
Oh,
Oh,
there's one.
oh, okay. So yeah, so I
Oh,
just,
no, there's several. Wait, there's, okay.
that one, I just, when my brother went to death row, Jane, you know, he left 4 children behind, and now those children have had children. And so there's 10 children that lived their whole lives without their father and their grandfather. And then all of my nieces and nephews. And so there's like, you know, 30 little kids that had to live without him, because if there's a child involved in a murder and you go to death row, you never get to see children again. So he was never allowed to see all the children.
Oh.
So that's why I said it would really touch my heart when I thought about it. I'm like, you know, our kids really suffered all these years, 25 years without Louis.
Yeah.
But at least we have pictures that we can send him, and he loves them all dearly.
Wow,
And then the
well,
last
that's
picture,
helpful.
yeah, it was. The last picture is our friend Bill Pelkey on the right, who passed away. And I know that he's resting in power, and we feel him in our hearts and our souls. And then he's pictured here with one of his very best friends, Dr. Jack Sullivan, who is an amazing activist as well. We were in Washington, D.C. there a couple of years ago. So thank you so much for having me, Jane.
Oh, gosh, I love this talk. And, you know, I just was thinking about that guy you asked me if I know him. Was he from an exoneree from California? Just real quick.
Which one?
What song? Did you call him Sanchi?
Oh, yeah. Yes. Shuja.
Suja. Was he from California?
Yes. He was from California.
I think I have an image of him with George White in front and him in the back.
You know, he tells a wonderful story of being a Black man, you know, from Louisiana, which is, you know, it's just a difficult place to be in the South. And he went to prison in California, and they falsely accused him of murdering a guard. And there was this beautiful white woman who was a nurse, and she came to get him, and she said, you know, come with me. I'm going to, you know, and he said, no, I'm not going anywhere with you. You're going to kill me. And he just refused to go anywhere with her. And eventually they became friends and comrades, and they actually got married and had a whole family. So Shuja Brown and Phyllis and Prentice is her last name. But yeah, I bet that's a wonderful picture. That's a picture to cherish with him. And
well, it's not as just him and George. Yeah. And actually I've shown it in several places, but I'm just getting that stuff back out again. So
yeah, well, George is wonderful.
Yeah. I mean, I'm glad to see he's still living around too. I'm trying to keep up with everybody, but
yeah.
We're probably going to close up now, but I just need to see, do we need to have any last minute questions to Fawn before we go?
I just have one actually. If there is anything we the students, the activist students can do for your brother or anyone else in the death row but innocent? Is there anything I can do from California?
Well,
This is
you
my
know,
question.
you guys are doing a great job out there in California. You dismantled the death penalty out there. So, you know, I think it's such a great thing that you guys have done out there in California. And I've been really fortunate to go out there and show Lewis's artwork. And I think as far as my brother is concerned, I'll give Lindsay his mailing address. And if you want to send him a little encouraging note, that would be awesome.
I sure will.
Thank
I promise
you.
I will.
In
Thank you
fact,
so much.
Delia, if you send me his address and everything, I'll stick that in Slack as well.
Okay.
And maybe we can make that a group project, a little something that we do just to do. I mean, I can't like, set it in the syllabus because somebody will go crazy, or I would, you know. I don't know who will do it, but one of them will. Yeah, no, somebody will go, hey, change it, and they'll get like, yeah, they get some going.
Well,
So I've learned to
be
just keep it
ecstatic.
like, yeah, but I mean, I can sit it in there and Tufan and I can do it, and we can encourage. There's lots of people in there that I think that Matt would be Matt happy
Let me
to do
just
that.
stick it in there right now. Lewis,
And email it too, though, because I
Correct.
can't copy it.
328 Polutsky Unit 3872. FM stands for Farm to Market Roads, Tufan, FM 350 South.
I don't think we can see it. Can you
Living-
see it, Tufan?
It's in the
I
chat.
cannot.
If you go
Okay.
in,
Oh, is it in the chat? I'm looking in the chat. I don't see it.
I haven't, there it is.
There it is. Okay. So
Okay.
let me copy that. I'm gonna put it in our.
Oh, he will be so excited to hear from you guys.
Yeah, we can do that. I think I have Slack pulled up real quick.
It-
No, I
it-
don't, but I'll copy it and paste it right now.
It has to be white paper and white envelopes only.
Okay.
Okay.
White paper and white envelopes. And
Okay.
around the holidays and Mother's Day, Father's Day, you can send an actual card. But for right now, it's just safe to do it on white paper and white envelope.
Okay, I'm gonna do it right now.
Thank
And
you.
I've got it copied and I'm logging in, but I think I don't want to hang up until I make sure, because I want to make sure and get it, and then we can hang up. I'm just gonna set it in right now, and then I can push send later.
All right.
Yeah, and there it goes. Okay, so let me come up here. All right.
All
So
right,
Delia,
thank you.
we love you. Thank you
Love
so
you too.
much. And I can't wait to see you in August.
Yes.
All right, and
thank
we'll make the picture, and I'll bring that other one because it makes me think you might not have it. It's such a beautiful picture.
Thank you.
And
I
then
love
we'll
that.
put the we'll do a double. It'll be fun.
All right. Sounds
Okay.
good.
All right, girl.
See ya.
See you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Ciao.
Bye. Bye. Too fun.
Bye.
Thank you,
Take
Tufan.
care. Bye bye.